Hello, everyone. Today, I would like to introduce to you the story, The 5,000-Year Hidden Truth Behind Jack and the Beanstalk Shock History. Now, please listen to this story. Hey, guys, tonight we're going to peel back the familiar, cozy blanket of a childhood fairy tale and find something cold, ancient, and impossibly vast underneath. You're lying in the dark, picturing a green stalk reaching for the clouds. You see a boy, a handful of beans, a grumpy giant. It feels safe. It feels known. But the truth is, the world that birthed this story is so alien, so brutal and strange, that if you were dropped into it, you probably wouldn't survive the first winter, let alone find a magic harp. The real story isn't about a boy named Jack. It's about you and a memory buried so deep in our collective DNA that we've been telling it to each other for 5,000 years. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let's begin in a place that feels familiar. You are standing in a small, dusty yard, next to a cottage with a sagging thatched roof. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth and the quiet desperation of poverty. You are Jack, or at least you're the boy who will become Jack. Your only companion, besides your weary, widowed mother, is a cow. Let's call her Daisy. Not a very original name, I'll grant you, but she's your entire world. Her ribs are starting to show, a stark wooden xylophone beneath her hide, and her milk has run dry. She is your family's last asset, the final line item on a budget that has been in the red for a very long time. Your mother, her face etched with a map of worries, tells you to take Daisy to the market. The instruction is simple. The weight behind it is immense. Sell the cow. Bring back money. The coins you get in return are meant to be bread, firewood, a few more weeks of survival. You nod, take the rope, and begin the lonely walk. You don't get far. Along the road, you meet a man. He's a strange figure, with eyes that seem to see right through your worn-out tunic and into the hopeful, naive core of you. He doesn't offer you money. He offers you a deal that sounds like a riddle. He offers you magic. 5 beans. That's his price for your cow. They aren't ordinary beans, he assures you. They are full of a strange power. And you, being a boy on the cusp of an adventure, you can't yet comprehend, agree. You trade your entire net worth, your 4-legged family heirloom, for a handful of legumes. It is, by any sensible measure, the worst trade in history. A truly terrible startup investment. When you get home, your mother's reaction is exactly what you'd expect. There's rage, there's despair, there are tears. She snatches the beans from your hand and hurls them out the window into the garden. You go to bed without supper, the emptiness in your stomach a perfect match for the foolishness in your head. But then the world shifts. While you sleep, something impossible happens. The earth cracks. A green shoot, impossibly thick and vibrant, thrusts its way into the moonlight. It grows and grows, not like a plant, but like a muscle, flexing and climbing, twisting around itself, unfurling giant leaves as it surges upwards. It doesn't stop at the roof. It pierces the low-hanging clouds and just keeps going, a great green ladder to a place you never knew existed. When you wake, you see it. Your mistake has become a miracle. Your foolishness has become a pathway. So you do the only thing a boy in a fairy tale can do. You start a climb. The stalk is rough against your palms, wide as an ancient tree trunk. You pull yourself up, past your window, past the thatched roof, past the point where the birds fly. The air grows thin and cold. Your village shrinks to a tiny patch of brown and green below. And then you are in a new world, a silent, pearlescent kingdom of clouds. Before you is a road paved with white mist, leading to a castle so immense it seems to be holding the sky up. Everything here is built for a different scale of life. The castle door is a cliff face with a handle the size of a small boat. You slip inside, a tiny mouse in a house of gods, and you find the giant's wife. She's a curious figure, this woman. She seems both terrified of her husband and strangely sympathetic to you, this bit of human dust that has blown in. She is the classic enabler, really, who seems to need a much better home security plan. She hides you away as the floor begins to tremble. Thump, thump, thump. The giant is home. And here is where the story, really locks into place. The version we all tell, with the named hero Jack, was first standardized and published by a man named Benjamin Tabart in 1807. He was packaging old oral traditions for a new, literate audience of children. But the giant's famous chant is much, much older. He bellows, Fi Fo Fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. That exact phrase, or a close variation, was already ancient by then. It appears in Shakespeare's King Lear, written around 1606, showing that this terrifying, cannibalistic rhyme was part of the English cultural bloodstream long before Jack ever climbed his stalk. The giant can smell you. He knows an intruder is present. Yet his wife convinces him he's mistaken, and you watch, hidden, as he eats his gargantuan meal and then commands his treasures. A goose that lays perfect, solid golden eggs. A harp that plays beautiful, sad music all by itself. These are not objects of this world. They are pure magic, pure wealth, pure art, sitting on a giant's table. And you, the boy who traded a cow for beans, decide they belong to you. You are no longer just a fool. You are now a thief. A cat burglar in a land above the sky. You steal the goose. You steal the harp. And the harp, being a sentient and rather loyal instrument, calls out to its master. The giant wakes. He sees you. And the chase is on. You scramble back down the beanstalk, the giant's footsteps like thunder behind you. You reach the bottom, screaming for your mother to bring an axe. And as the giant's huge, clumsy legs descend from the clouds, you chop. The stalk splinters, groans, and falls, and the giant, this creature of the sky, comes crashing down to the earth, his body breaking on the ground he so despised, and you are rich. Your get-rich-quick scheme, based on a terrible investment and 2 acts of grand larceny, has paid off spectacularly. You and your mother live happily ever after. But as you stand there, looking at the dead giant and the magical goose, you have to wonder, are you the hero here? Or are you just a clever, desperate home invader who got lucky? Historians still argue whether the story's moral was originally about cleverness triumphing over brute force, or if it was a later addition to justify Jack's rather questionable actions. It's an unsettlingly dark and morally ambiguous story, isn't it? A boy commits a crime and is rewarded with infinite wealth. A being is murdered, and it's a happy ending. This strange, violent, nonsensical tale is the one that has survived. And the reason it feels so odd is because we've forgotten what it's actually about. We've forgotten what the giant, the goose, and the beanstalk truly were to the people who first told this story, huddled around a fire 5,000 years ago. That queasy feeling you get about Jack, the little hero thief, is your first clue. It's the echo of a moral compass that has been spinning for 5 millennia. The rules of what makes a hero, what defines a crime, and what constitutes a happy ending have all changed. The story feels odd because it's wearing modern clothes, but its bones, its very skeleton, were formed in a world without kings, without castles as we know them, without England, and most importantly, without a single written word. You're trying to read a story from the Bronze Age with a 21st century instruction manual. It's never going to quite line up. So let's try to imagine that. A world without writing. It's harder than you think. You're surrounded by it now. The words on this screen, the labels on your clothes, the street signs outside your window. Your entire world is built on the silent, shared agreement of symbols. Take it all away. There are no books. There are no scrolls. No grocery lists. No legal contracts. No, I was here carved into a tree. Every single piece of information your culture possesses, your history, your laws, your religion, your science, your gossip, has to be stored in the most volatile and miraculous hard drive ever created, human memory. Think about the pressure. You can't just look it up. If the old woman who knows the cure for a fever dies without passing on the knowledge, that cure is gone. Forever. If the warrior who knows the path through the treacherous mountain pass falls in battle, that path is lost. Knowledge is fragile. It's mortal. And the most important knowledge of all, the stories that explain who you are and where you came from, must be protected at all costs. They are your identity. They were the original streaming service, providing entertainment, education, and a shared universe all in one. This is the world where the story of the boy and the sky world was born. It wasn't written down in a leather-bound book. It was spoken over a fire. It was chanted on long migrations. It was performed with wild gestures and booming voices to an audience who knew the story by heart but loved hearing it again anyway. Repetition was a feature, not a bug. It was how you remembered. The story was polished smooth over generations, like a stone in a river, losing details here, gaining a new twist there, but always keeping its essential shape. Mainstream history tells us that writing was invented sometime around 3500 BCE in Mesopotamia. The Sumerians started making marks on wet clay tablets, mostly to keep track of grain and sheep. It was accounting, basically. The world's first ever written stories were just spreadsheets tracking inventory. So when we say that Jack of the Beanstalk might be older than writing, we are saying its origins lie somewhere in that deep, dark, pre-literate fog, before anyone had ever thought to scratch a symbol for cow onto a piece of clay. This story may be older than the very concept of history itself. You have to wonder, how can we possibly know this? It sounds like a fantasy. How can a story leave a fossil? It's not a bone or a piece of pottery. It's breath and sound, ephemeral and gone the moment it's told. For a long time, historians believed it was impossible to trace oral tales back this far. They assumed that stories changed so much with each telling, like a game of telephone over centuries, that any original form would be completely unrecognizable. The oldest known version of a Jack-like tale was thought to be a Norse story called The Foolish Boy and the Harp, from around the 14th century. That's still impressively old, but it's a long, long way from 5,000 years. But this assumption ignores a quirky little fact about oral cultures. They were exceptionally good at memorization. Bards and storytellers were the living libraries of their people. Their training was rigorous. They used mnemonic devices, poetic structures, rhythm, and rhyme to lock epic tales into their minds with incredible accuracy. Folklorists and anthropologists constantly debate how much a story can truly change while still being considered the same story, but the core narrative archetypes are surprisingly durable. A hero, a monster, a magical theft, a narrow escape. These are the load-bearing walls of the story structure. You can repaint the rooms, change the furniture, but the foundation remains. Imagine you are a child in this pre-literate world. The sun has gone down. The fire is the only circle of light and warmth in a vast, pressing darkness full of things you can't see. An elder begins to speak. They don't say, "Once upon a time." That's a new invention. They begin with a sound, a rhythm, a familiar opening line that has been spoken by their grandparents and their grandparents' grandparents. The story isn't just entertainment. It's a survival guide. It contains warnings about strangers. It holds lessons about risk and reward. It explains the terrifying, unknowable world of the gods who live in the sky and control the rain and thunder. The story of a boy who angers a sky being and steals a magical, life-giving object wasn't just a fun yarn. It was a piece of essential cultural software. It explained your people's relationship with the divine, with nature, and with the terrifying but necessary act of challenging the old order to create a new future. You, as the listener, weren't just hearing about Jack. You were hearing about yourselves. For decades, the idea that we could trace this story back to a single point of origin, thousands of years before the first written version, was considered fringe, almost mystical. It was a romantic notion, but not a scientific one. There was no data, no proof. Just a hunch that some stories felt older, deeper, and more widespread than others. But then a new tool emerged, borrowed from a completely different field of science. A tool designed not to track stories, but to track the evolution of life itself. And when scholars applied this tool to the world's fairy tales, they found something shocking. They found a family tree for stories, and on one of its oldest, thickest branches was a tale they called The Boy Who Stole the Ogre's Treasure. And you know it by a different name. The idea of tracing stories like genes sound like science fiction, but it's rooted in a very real and very clever adaptation of a scientific method. You've seen the results of this method before, probably in a museum or a nature documentary. It's the tool that shows us how a wolf, over millions of years, is related to a whale, or how a simple fern shares a distant ancestor with a giant redwood. It's called phylogenetics. And normally it has absolutely nothing to do with fairy tales. Phylogenetics is, at its heart, a way of building family trees. Biologists use it to map the evolutionary relationships between different species. They do this by comparing their characteristics, traditionally, things like bone structure or beak shape, and now, more powerfully, their DNA sequences. The logic is simple. The more similarities two species share, the more closely they are related, and the more recently they must have split off from a common ancestor. A human and a chimpanzee share about 98.8% of their DNA. A human and a banana, on the other hand, share about 60%. This tells you, in a not-so-gentle way, that while we're all part of the same extended family of life, you had a shared grandparent with a chimp much more recently than you did with a banana you might have had for breakfast. That's a quirky fact for your next awkward silence. So, how do you apply this to a story? A story doesn't have DNA. It doesn't have bones. Or does it? An anthropologist named Jack Zips and a biologist from Durham University named Sarah Graca da Silva decided that stories do have a kind of genetic code. They are made up of small, identifiable units of plot. These are the story's genes. Think of them as data points. For our story, these points might include: is the hero male or female? Is the villain a giant, an ogre, a witch, or a demon? Does the hero climb a tree, a rope, a stalk of wheat, or a tower? What is the stolen object? A magical instrument, a food-producing animal, a bag of gold? Does the hero have a helper? Like the giant's wife, how does the hero escape? By cutting down the climbing object, for instance, you can break down any fairy tale into dozens of these little plot points. They are the story's DNA. Once you have this data, you can treat different versions of a fairy tale just like different species. You take hundreds of variants of the Jack and the Beanstalk story type from Ireland, from Germany, from India, from Scandinavia, and you compare their plot point DNA. The versions that share the most plot points are the most closely related. They are like sisters. Versions that share some, but not all, are like cousins. This is where it gets really clever. The researchers then overlaid this story family tree onto another family tree, the tree of human languages. Specifically, the Indo-European language family, which includes everything from English and German to Russian, Greek, Persian, and Hindi. All of these languages evolved from a single ancient mother tongue that linguists call Proto-Indo-European, or PE. By mapping the story's evolution alongside the evolution of the languages of the people telling it, they could triangulate a story's age. If a specific version of a story exists in two different but related languages, say, an early form of German and an early form of Celtic, you can reasonably assume that the story existed before those two languages split apart. You can find the common ancestor of the story by finding the common ancestor of the language. It's like finding the same unique family recipe for a specific kind of cake in the kitchens of two distant cousins. You know the recipe must have come from their shared grandmother. The story is the recipe, and the language is the family line. This technique is revolutionary, but also highly controversial. The central academic debate, which rages to this day, is whether stories could truly be treated like biological species. Many folklorists argue that stories don't just evolve by splitting off from one another, they also cross-pollinate. Storytellers hear tales from other cultures and borrow bits and pieces, merging different traditions. A storyteller in medieval France might hear a tale from a passing Norse trader and decide to steal the cool giant from that story and plop him into his own local tale about a magic plant. This is called horizontal transfer, and it messes up the clean, branching family tree model of phylogenetics. It's like a bird suddenly acquiring a gene from a fish without having a common ancestor. It complicates things, to say the least. But despite the controversy, the results of the 2016 study by De Silva and her colleagues were stunning. They analyzed a tale type known to folklorists as ATU 328, the boy who stole the ogre's treasure. They found, with a high degree of statistical probability, that this story type was already a stable part of the oral tradition when the western branch of the Indo-European languages began to split into the Proto-Germanic, Proto-Celtic, and Proto-Italic families. This split happened around 5,000 years ago, in the Bronze Age. This means that a story about a boy climbing up to a sky world, tricking a powerful being, and stealing a magical object that provides prosperity is not an English story, or a German story, or a French story. It is a Proto-Indo-European story. Its first tellers were not farmers in muddy English shires. They were semi-nomadic horsemen thundering across the vast grassy plains of Eastern Europe. You are no longer in a cozy, familiar cottage. You are somewhere else entirely. You are about to be transported back 5,000 years to the Pontic-Caspian steppe, a sweeping, endless sea of grass that stretches from modern-day Ukraine to Kazakhstan. The air is colder here. The sky is bigger. And the people who live under it are the ones who dreamed up the giant in the clouds. They are your impossibly distant ancestors. And you are about to become one of them. The world you're standing in now has vanished so completely that it might as well be another planet. Forget the damp, green hills of England. You're on the Pontic-Caspian steppe around 3000 BCE. Straighten up from your crouch by the fire and look around. There are no trees. Not a single one, except for thin, scraggly lines of them clinging to the riverbanks. There is only grass. It stretches in every direction, a vast pale ocean of it, rippling under a sky so enormous it feels like a physical weight. The horizon is a perfect, clean line, 360 degrees around you. You have never seen a mountain. You have never seen an ocean. This grassland is your entire universe. You are one of the people linguists and archaeologists call the Proto-Indo-Europeans, or the PIE people for short. You don't call yourselves that, of course. You have a name for your tribe, your clan, and your people, but it's been lost to time, a word that dissolved into the air 5 millennia ago. You are not a farmer, not in the way you'd understand it. Your people tried that for a while, but the soil here is thin and the rains are fickle. The real revolution, the one that changed everything for your people, is standing right over there, snorting impatiently and flicking its tail at a fly. A horse. Your people were among the first in the world to truly domesticate the horse. This is a mainstream historical fact, solidified by archaeological evidence of horse bits and corrals from this era. Before this, horses were just another fast-moving meat animal to be hunted. But you didn't just tame them. You mastered them. You learned to ride them. This single innovation turned your world from a place you walked across to a place you flew across. It gave you speed, distance, power. It's hard to overstate how massive a technological leap this was. It was the Bronze Age equivalent of inventing the airplane and the tank at the same time. On horseback, you could hunt more effectively, trade further, and most importantly, raid your neighbors with terrifying efficiency. Your life is semi-nomadic, a constant, slow-motion search for new pastures for your herds. Your true wealth isn't gold or land, it's animals. Cattle, mostly. They are your walking bank accounts, your grocery stores, and your status symbols. A man's worth is measured in the size of his herd. You drink their milk, you eat their meat, you use their hides for clothes, and their bones for tools. The cow that Jack's mother makes him sell. To your people, that wasn't just a single animal. That was the last remnant of a fortune, the ghost of a lost herd. You live in a small settlement, but not a village of cottages. Your homes are temporary, designed to be moved. Some of you live in pit houses, dug halfway into the earth for insulation against the brutal winters and the scorching summers. Others live in tents made of felt or hide, stretched over a wooden frame, the distant ancestors of the yurts still used on the steppes today. But your most significant structures are your graves. You bury your important dead in deep pits under huge mounds of earth called kurgans. These mounds are the only hills in this flat land, man-made mountains for the honored dead, filled with their weapons, their ornaments, and sometimes their sacrificed horses and servants. Life is hard. Life is short. A cut can kill you. A bad winter can wipe out your herd and starve your family. Your front teeth are probably worn down from using them as a third hand to grip leather while you work it. A quirky but common feature seen in skulls from this period is extreme dental wear, not from diet, but from using teeth as tools. You have to be strong. You have to be clever. And you have to be deeply, intimately connected to the forces of nature that govern your world. And the most powerful force in your world is the sky. In this flat, featureless landscape, the sky isn't just a background. It's an active, powerful character in your life. It brings the sun that warms you, the rain that makes the grass grow, and the terrifying thunderstorms that can stampede your cattle. It's where the birds fly, messengers from another realm. At night, it's a dome of pure, cold starlight, unpolluted by any other light source. It is, for all intents and purposes, the home of your gods. You don't have a single, all-powerful god. You have a whole family of them, boisterous, often violent pantheon of deities who control the world. Historians still argue whether the Proto-Indo-Europeans had a fully developed, universal pantheon, or if different tribes worshipped local variations. But by reconstructing the words for gods from their daughter languages, we can be fairly certain about a few key players. And the undisputed king of the celestial board, the CEO of the sky, is the Sky Father. His name might be Darius PTR. You can hear the echo of it in the gods that will come later, the Greek Zeus Pater, the Roman Jupiter, the Norse Tyr. He is the god of the bright, daytime sky. He is powerful, but he is not alone up there. There are other beings, storm gods, who ride across the heavens in chariots, hurling lightning bolts that split the sky and shake the very ground you stand on. They are loud. They are terrifying. They are destructive. And when you look up at the dark, roiling clouds of a summer storm gathering on the horizon, seeming to build a solid, dark castle in the air, you see their home. This is where the giant lives. He is not a clumsy, oafish man in a big castle. He is a god, or a demon, or a nature spirit. The lines are blurry. He is the embodiment of the destructive, terrifying power that lives in the world above yours. And you, a small human on the vast earth below, are utterly at his mercy. He can withhold the rain and cause a drought, killing your herds. He can send a flood to wash away your camp. He is the ultimate, powerful being, the original grumpy giant who jealously guards the treasures of the sky, the sun, the rain, the lightning, the very things that mean life and death to you and your people. The story of the boy climbing the beanstalk is not a fairy tale. It's a raid. It's a myth about a human hero brave enough to climb into the realm of the gods and steal back the things you need to survive. You stand on the endless grass, your felt boots pressing into the thin soil, and you tilt your head back. The sky above you isn't a gentle, passive blue. It's a place of action, a realm of beings so powerful they defy your comprehension. This is the giant's home. But your Bronze Age giant isn't the Fi Fo Fum, rather dim-witted brute from the nursery rhyme. Your giant is a god. Or more precisely, he is a force of nature, given a name and a terrifying, larger-than-life human form. The Proto-Indo-European mind didn't separate the natural world from the supernatural. The thunderstorm wasn't a meteorological event caused by atmospheric pressure and temperature gradients. It was a war. It was your chief deity, the Sky Father, Dias PTR, doing battle with his enemies. Or it was a monstrous sky being on a rampage. The roar of thunder was his shout. The flash of lightning was his weapon. The dark, towering cloud bank wasn't just water vapor. It was his fortress, a real, physical place in the sky. This is the key to understanding the original giant. He is the personification of a hostile sky. He is the storm god, the frost giant, the drought demon. He is the being who holds the life-giving elements of the world hostage. Remember the giant in the fairy tale? He lives in a castle in the clouds. This isn't just a whimsical fantasy detail. For you, living on the steppe 5,000 years ago, it was a literal truth. The cloud world was a real place, and powerful beings lived there. Linguists and mythologists have reconstructed the name of one of these beings, a mythical enemy of the gods and humanity. They call him serpent or dragon. This wasn't necessarily a scaly, fire-breathing lizard. The word was more flexible. It meant constrictor, choker. It was a monster that withheld things. Specifically, it was known for stealing and hoarding the waters, causing catastrophic drought. The greatest heroic act a god or hero could perform was to slay this serpent and release the waters, bringing life back to the parched land and the thirsty cattle. You can see this myth echoed down through the centuries. Indra slaying the dragon Vritra in Vedic India, Thor slaying the world serpent Jormungandr in Norse myth, Zeus battling the monster Typhon in Greek legend. It is the same core story, told with different accents. Your giant is a version of this monster. He is the one who has taken all the good stuff and locked it away in his sky fortress. He is the ultimate hoarder. Think about what the fairy tale giant possesses: a goose that lays golden eggs and a self-playing harp. We see them as symbols of wealth and luxury. But to you, they were something far more fundamental. The goose that lays golden eggs is an endless source of prosperity, a magical food-producing animal. In a world where your entire existence depends on the health of your herd, a creature that produces wealth from nothing is the ultimate fantasy. The golden eggs aren't just bling. They represent grain, sunlight, life itself. The harp is even more potent. The self-playing harp represents the divine order of the universe. It is the sound of creation, the music of the spheres. In a world without Spotify, where the only music is what you make yourselves, a magical instrument that produces perfect, celestial music is a direct connection to the divine. Its music could be the wind in the grass, the rhythm of the seasons, the very voice of the gods. When the giant has the harp, he controls the cosmic order. When the hero steals it, he is restoring that order to the world of humans. This is the great quest of your people's heroes. They don't just fight monsters. They challenge the hostile gods who jealously guard the raw materials of life. The hero's journey to the other world, be it a land of the dead, a magical island, or a kingdom in the sky, is a foundational myth. And the mainstream historical fact is that this other world was often seen as a real, physical place you could theoretically travel to. The Celts had their magical islands to the west. The Greeks had Mount Olympus. And you, the Proto-Indo-European, had the Sky Realm. Now for a quirky tidbit, the giant's famous Fi Fo Fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman chant, is a fascinating fossil. The specific Englishman part is obviously a much later addition from when the story settled in the British Isles. But the core of it, I smell the blood of a living man, is ancient. It speaks to a deep primal belief that beings of the other world, whether they be gods, spirits, or monsters, have a supernatural sense of smell. They can detect the scent of a mortal who has trespassed into their realm. It's a recurring motif in folklore worldwide. The supernatural world knows when a living, breathing creature has crossed the boundary. It smells the hot, coppery scent of life and blood in its cold, ethereal domain. Your blood is a marker of your mortality, a scent that gives you away in the land of the immortals. Scholars still argue whether the sky beings of Proto-Indo-European myth were seen as uniformly evil, or if they were more complex, like the Greek gods, capable of both great good and terrible evil. Were they true giants in the modern sense of being a separate, monstrous race? Or were they just a faction of the gods themselves, the Sky Titans that a younger generation of hero gods had to overthrow? This debate highlights the difficulty of reconstructing a belief system from the echoes left in language and myth. But for you, huddled in your pit house as a thunderstorm rages outside, the distinction is academic. The being in the sky is powerful. He is terrifying. And he has things you need. The world is out of balance. The wealth is up there, and the poverty is down here. The music is up there, and the silence is down here. Someone has to be brave enough or foolish enough to correct that imbalance. Someone has to find a way to climb into that hostile, cloud-paved world. Someone has to build a bridge between your world and the giants. The giant lives in the sky. You live on the earth. This is the fundamental problem. There is a vast empty space between your world of grass and dirt and his world of clouds and thunder. How do you get there? You can't fly. Your newly tamed horses can give you dominion over the horizontal world, but the vertical one remains stubbornly out of reach. You need a bridge, a ladder, a road that connects the realms. You need a beanstalk. Of course, your Proto-Indo-European beanstalk isn't a literal beanstalk. The specific detail of the fast-growing plant is a later addition, a masterstroke of storytelling that made the abstract idea wonderfully, magically concrete for generations of farmers and gardeners. For you, the object that connects the earth to the sky is something far grander and more cosmic. You know it as the world tree. The concept of a world tree, or axis mundi, the axis of the world, is one of the most widespread mythological ideas on the planet. It's a mainstream anthropological fact that cultures from Siberia to Mesoamerica to India have independently developed the image of a colossal tree, pillar, or mountain that stands at the center of the universe and links the different realms, the land of the dead below, the world of mortals in the middle, and the home of the gods above. It is the spine of the cosmos. Your beanstalk is the folk memory of this magnificent, universe-spanning tree. For the Norse, who inherited so much of your Pi culture, it was Yggdrasil, the great ash tree whose roots drank from the wells of fate and whose branches held up the sky. For the ancient Hindus, another of your cultural descendants, it was the Ashvatha tree, with its roots in heaven and its branches reaching down to earth, a powerful symbol of the universe turned upside down. For you, the concept is likely just as central. This tree is the ultimate landmark in a land with no landmarks. It is the one fixed point in your nomadic world. You can't see it with your physical eyes, of course, but you know it's there. It is the scaffold upon which reality is built. Your hero doesn't just plant a bean and hope for the best. In the oldest strata of the myth, he discovers or is led to this cosmic tree. Climbing it is a sacred, terrifying act. It's not a fun afternoon adventure. It's a spiritual pilgrimage, a transgression into a realm where mortals are not welcome. As you ascend, you are leaving the world of the living and entering the world of the divine. The air changes. The rules change. The very nature of reality shifts. Think about Jack's climb. He ascends into a world of clouds, a silent, sterile kingdom. This beautifully captures the feeling of entering another world. It's a place that is fundamentally different from the warm, breathing earth below. The beanstalk is his passport, the magical object that allows him to cross the ultimate border. Now for a quirky and slightly dizzying tidbit about the axis mundi. The idea isn't just mythological. It might be rooted in a real, observable phenomenon. Some scholars, particularly those interested in archaeoastronomy, suggest that the world tree or cosmic pillar could be a mythological interpretation of the celestial pole. The celestial pole is the point in the sky around which all the stars appear to rotate. Today, in the northern hemisphere, that point is marked by Polaris, the North Star. But due to the slow wobble of the Earth's axis, called precession, the pole star changes over thousands of years. The theory is that ancient people, watching the stars circle a fixed point night after night, saw this invisible pillar as the literal axis of the heavens, the nail holding the sky dome in place. The world tree, in this interpretation, is a poetic description of the structure of the observable universe. Climbing it means you are traveling to the very center of cosmic power. Of course, historians still argue whether the world tree myth was a universal belief among all Proto-Indo-European tribes, or if it was just one of several competing cosmologies. Some groups may have envisioned a great mountain at the center of the world, others a pillar of smoke from a cosmic fire, or even a mighty river. The beanstalk of the original story could have been any of these things. What matters is its function. It connects the mundane to the magical. It is the one-lane highway to the giant's front door. So you have your hero, a representative of your struggling people. You have your giant, the personification of a hostile sky god hoarding the resources of life. And now you have your beanstalk, the axis mundi, the dangerous path that links them. All the pieces are on the board. The story is a map of your cosmos. The earth is the world of humans, full of struggle and desire. The sky is the world of the gods, full of power and treasure. And the beanstalk is the heroic, perilous path you must take to challenge the gods and claim a portion of that power for yourself. The story isn't about getting rich quick. It's about cosmic theft. It's a raid on heaven itself. Your hero isn't just a boy. He is a kind of trickster, a culture hero, a Prometheus who dares to steal fire from the gods. He is going to climb that tree not just for himself, but for his people. He is going to restore balance to the universe by bringing the treasures of the sky down to the earth. And in doing so, he will prove that the cunning and courage of a small human can, just maybe, be more powerful than the brute force of a giant. He is the embodiment of your people's defiant hope, a hope that will be whispered around campfires for the next 5,000 years. Now it's time to step into the hero's shoes. Not the patched-up leather boots of a boy named Jack, but the worn, felt-and-hide wrappings of a nameless Bronze Age youth. You are not yet a hero. You are just a boy from a tribe that has fallen on hard times. Perhaps a disease has swept through your cattle herd. Perhaps a drought has withered the grass to dust, and your animals are thin and dying. Your family, your clan, is on the brink of collapse. The world is out of whack, and the gods, it seems, have forgotten you. You are the one chosen, or the one who chooses to undertake the great quest. This isn't a decision made lightly. The other world is not a tourist destination. Your elders have told stories of those who have tried to travel to the land of the gods and never returned, or who came back driven mad by what they saw. To climb the world tree is to risk everything, your life, your sanity, your very soul. But the alternative is to sit and watch your people fade away. So the choice is made. You must go. Your quest is the embodiment of a deep cultural archetype that scholars call the hero's journey, a pattern of narrative identified by mythologist Joseph Campbell. But you don't know about scholarly patterns. You just know that a great wrong must be righted, and you are the one who has to do it. You are the protagonist in your people's sacred drama. Your personal story is about to become the story of everyone. You find the pathway to the sky. Maybe it's a colossal, sky-reaching tree on a distant, sacred plain. Maybe it's a shimmering rope that an eagle spirit lowers for you. Maybe it's a whirlwind that snatches you up. The method doesn't matter as much as the transition. You begin to climb. The world you know, the familiar smells of horses and wood smoke, the sounds of your people fades below you. You are entering a liminal space, a place that is neither here nor there. The air grows cold and thin. A profound silence descends, broken only by the whisper of the wind. This climb is your first great test. It is a trial of endurance and will. Your muscles ache. Your hands are raw. Doubt creeps in. But you keep going, driven by the image of your starving family and the promise of what lies at the top. When you finally pull yourself over the edge, you are in a new land. The ground is solid but strange, made of packed cloud or shining mist. Before you lies the fortress of the sky being. It is immense, built on a scale that dwarfs all human architecture. Its walls are thunderheads, Its gates are flashes of lightning. This is a place of raw, elemental power. You are now a trespasser in a hostile land. Your smallness is absolute. You are a mouse creeping into the den of a lion. Here you might find an unexpected ally, a recurring character in these ancient myths, the giant's wife or daughter. In the fairy tale, she is a sympathetic but fearful human woman. In the original myth, she is likely a goddess or spirit herself, but one who is dissatisfied with her lot. Perhaps she is a captive. Perhaps she sees in you, this tiny, brave mortal, a chance to disrupt the oppressive order of her world. She is the chink in the giant's armor, the insider who will help you. Historians still argue whether this female figure represents a captured goddess from a rival pantheon or a more compassionate aspect of nature that can be won over by the hero. She hides you. And then the sky god comes home. You don't just hear his footsteps, you feel them. The entire cloud world trembles with his approach. He is not a fat, bumbling man. He is a terrifying figure of cosmic power. His eyes like burning coals, his voice the roar of a storm. And he can smell you. I smell a mortal man, he bellows. That ancient line isn't just about blood. It's about the scent of the profane and the sacred, the scent of the earthly and the celestial. It is the smell of everything that does not belong in his world. The giant's wife, your ally, deceives him. She is the trickster's helper, using her own cunning to protect you. She assures him he's mistaken, that the smell is just the lingering scent of the meal she's cooking, perhaps a stolen bowl from the world below. The giant, arrogant, and perhaps a little stupid in his power, believes her. This is a crucial moment. It's the first sign that the giant's power, while immense, is not absolute. He can be fooled. His mind is not as sharp as his senses. Cunning can triumph over strength. This is the central lesson your people need to hear. Your survival depends not on being the strongest, but on being the cleverest. This is a recurring theme in Proto-Indo-European mythology. The mainstream view is that their culture celebrated a warrior ethos, valuing strength and heroic deeds in battle. This is undoubtedly true. But there is another equally important figure, the trickster. The clever hero who wins not through force, but through wits. Loki in Norse myth, Odysseus in Greek myth. You are channeling this trickster energy. You are David, and the giant is your Goliath, but you will defeat him not with a sling, but with your mind. And here's a quirky fact about tricksters. In many cultures, they are not just clever, but also boundary crossers. They often have the ability to change their shape, their gender, or to travel between worlds. In a way, by climbing the world tree, you have become a kind of shapeshifter, transforming yourself from a mere boy into a world traveler, an intruder in the realm of the gods. You have broken the most fundamental rule of the cosmos. You have left your designated place. And now that you're here, hidden inside the fortress of your enemy, listening to his booming voice and the shaking of the floor, you wait for your moment. You are no longer just a boy. You have passed the first tests. You have proven your courage and your endurance. You have found an ally. You have outwitted the monster for now. You have become the proto-hero. Your quest is not over. The most dangerous part is yet to come, the theft itself. You must steal the very symbols of the giant's power and bring them back to your people. You are hidden, a speck of mortal dust in the corner of a god's kitchen. The sky giant has eaten his monstrous meal, and now, content and drowsy, he calls for his treasures. This is the moment you've been waiting for. This is why you risk the climb. You are here to steal back what your people have lost. But what exactly are you stealing? In the 19th century version of the tale, Jack steals a bag of gold, then the golden egg-laying goose, and finally the magical harp. It's a simple escalation of wealth. But for you, the Proto-Indo-European hero, the treasures are not about getting rich. They are about restoring the fundamental machinery of life. Let's look at the goose first. A goose or a hen that lays golden eggs. For a Victorian audience, this is a magical money-printing machine. It's the ultimate symbol of effortless wealth. But you are not a Victorian. You are a Bronze Age pastoralist. Your concept of wealth is not a bag of coins. It's a herd of cattle. Your cattle are your walking, breathing, milk-producing capital. They are the source of almost everything you need to live. So, what does a magical, wealth-producing bird represent to you? The goose is a stand-in for your stolen herds. It's a compact, mythological symbol for all the livestock that has been lost to drought or disease. The giant, the hostile sky god, has taken your prosperity. He has your cattle, your source of life, locked away in his cloud fortress. The golden eggs aren't just gold. They are the promise of endless nourishment, of a herd that can never be depleted, of life triumphing over death and famine. When you steal that goose, you aren't just committing larceny. You are reclaiming the very basis of your society's survival. It is an act of cosmic restitution. Now, let's consider the harp. A beautiful, golden harp that plays music by itself. To the fairy tale audience, this is a marvelous curiosity, a magical music box. But to your people, music is not just entertainment. It's a sacred force. Remember, you live in a world without writing. Your sacred texts, your histories, your laws, they are all encoded in epic poems and chants. The bards who sing these songs are not just musicians. They are your priests, your historians, your living libraries. Their music literally holds your world together. A self-playing harp, then, is something incredibly powerful. It is the source of all sacred song. It is the voice of the cosmos itself, the divine order made audible. The mainstream historical view is that in many ancient cultures, music was believed to have magical properties. It could heal the sick, make crops grow, and commune with the gods. The harp isn't just playing a pretty tune. It is playing the song of creation, the rhythm of the seasons, the harmony that keeps the universe in balance. When the giant possesses the harp, the world is out of tune. The sacred order is broken. By stealing the harp, you are stealing back the divine blueprint for a harmonious world. You are restoring your people's connection to the gods, to the seasons, to the very structure of reality. And what about that first item Jack steals in many versions, the bag of gold? It feels like the most modern and least mythic of the treasures. But even it may have an ancient root. To you, gold isn't just currency. It's a piece of the sun. The word for gold in many Indo-European languages is related to the words for yellow and to shine. It is a solid, tangible piece of the solar fire, the life-giving power of the Sky Father. A bag of gold isn't a bag of money. It's a bag of captured sunlight, a remedy against the darkness and the cold. So you see, you are not a common thief. You are a reclaimer. You're taking back the three things your people need most: sustenance, the goose, cosmic order, the harp, and divine light, the gold. These are not random treasures. They are the essential pillars of your world. Here's a quirky tidbit. In some very old, very obscure variants of this story from around the world, the stolen object isn't a goose or a harp, but something far stranger. Sometimes it's a hand of glory, the severed hand of a hanged man that, when lit, can paralyze victims. Other times, it's a cloth of plenty that produces an endless feast. These variations show how the central idea, stealing a magical, life-giving object, can be dressed in different cultural clothes. The core function remains the same, even if the object itself changes from a magical bird to a magical, disembodied hand. It's a bit macabre, but it shows the story's adaptability. The academic debate here is a fascinating one. Folklorists argue whether the treasures were always symbolic, or if they started as more literal objects. Did the story originally feature the theft of a real, miraculous cow from a neighboring tribe, which was then mythologized into a golden egg-laying goose? Or was the story always a cosmic allegory about stealing fire from the gods? It's the classic chicken and egg question of mythology. Which came first, the historical event or the symbolic story? You wait for the giant to fall asleep. His snores like the rumble of distant thunder. Now is your chance. You move silently through the vast, shadowy hall. You snatch the bag of sunlight. You tuck the life-giving goose under your arm. It's surprisingly calm, perhaps sensing it's being liberated. You are doing well. But then you reach for the final prize, the harp. And the harp, being the voice of cosmic order, is not a passive object. It is a sentient being. It knows you are not its master. As you lift it, it cries out. It sings an alarm. The giant wakes. His eyes snap open, blazing with rage. He sees you, the tiny mortal, with his treasures, and he lets out a roar that shakes the foundations of the cloud castle. The chase is on. You are no longer a stealthy thief. You are desperate prey. You sprint for the exit, for the top of the world tree, the golden harp screaming betrayal under your arm, the giant's thunderous footsteps gaining on you. You have the prizes, but the quest is not complete until you bring them home. You are plummeting down the world tree, a controlled fall more than a climb. The rough bark tears at your hands, but you don't feel it. Adrenaline is a powerful anesthetic. The sentient harp under your arm is still wailing, a beautiful and terrifying alarm system that the giant really should have thought to install before it was stolen. Above you, the sky is filled with rage. You hear the cracking of colossal branches, the splintering of the cosmic trunk, as the giant, with no regard for the structural integrity of the universe's central pillar, begins his descent. He is faster than you thought. His weight makes the whole tree shudder. You scream a warning to the world below. A word in a language that no one has spoken for millennia, but its meaning is clear, Axe. You hit the ground, rolling, the magical goose honking in bewildered protest. Your people are there, your family, their faces pale with terror and awe, looking up at the impossible sight of a god descending from the heavens. The axe is thrust into your hands. It feels both heavy and light. You swing. The first chip flies from the trunk of the world tree. It's like striking living stone. You swing again, and again, your fear giving you a strength you didn't know you possessed. A deep groan echoes from the tree, a sound of cosmic pain. Above, the giant roars, realizing your intent. He tries to scramble back up, but it's too late. With a sound that is both a splintering of wood and a tearing of the fabric of reality, the great tree leans, groans, and then falls. It comes down in a slow, majestic, world-ending crash, and the giant, the sky god, the monster who hoarded the sun and the rain, falls with it. He hits the earth with the force of a meteor, silencing the world for a moment before a collective gasp of disbelief rises from your people. It is dawn. You stand panting, axe in hand, amid the wreckage of the bridge to heaven. The harp is silent. The goose is preening. The world is safe. And you are a hero. The story is over. But a story is never over. It has only just begun. Your heroic deed becomes the bedrock of a new age for your people. With the life-giving treasures restored, the herds grow fat, the people prosper. Your tale is told every night around the fire. It becomes the favorite, the one the children demand, the one the elders use to teach the core values of your culture. That courage and cunning can defeat even the greatest powers, that a single person can restore balance to the world, and then your world begins to move. It does not happen overnight. It is a slow, generational tide. The Proto-Indo-European people, your people, begin to expand from your homeland on the steppe. This is the Great Migration, a historical fact known as the Kurgan expansion. Powered by the twin technologies of the horse and the newly invented wheeled wagon, a quirky but world-changing contraption of axle, and when that was your Bronze Age moving then, your people began to push outwards. West into Europe, south towards Persia and India, north into the Russian force. You are part of this migration. You sit in a solid wheeled wagon that groans and rumbles over the earth, your family's entire worldly wealth in tow, a few pots, some tools, and the all-important herd of cattle plodding alongside. This isn't a weekend road trip. This is a life-changing, multi-generational crawl across a continent. Archaeologists and linguists still debate the exact routes and speeds of these migrations, whether they were a wave of violent conquest or a slower, more gradual process of cultural blending. The truth is likely a messy mix of both. And packed in your mind, the most important piece of luggage you carry is the story of a hero and the sky giant. As you travel, the landscape changes. The endless, flat sea of grass gives way to rolling hills, then to dense, dark forests unlike anything you have ever seen. The sky feels smaller here, crowded by trees. The old sky god, the giant in his cloud castle, feels more distant. The story, in order to survive, begins to adapt. It puts on a new coat to match the new weather. You meet other peoples, the inhabitants of old Europe, who have been living here for thousands of years. They have their own gods, their own monsters, their own stories. And as your cultures mix, so do your myths. It happens around a shared fire, on a trade route, in the space between conflict and coexistence. A local forest demon, a fearsome creature who lives in a cave, might suddenly sound a lot like your sky giant. A local legend about a magical salmon that grants wisdom might get woven into the hero's quest. The story is like a living organism, absorbing the DNA of its new environment. The storyteller in your new village, 1,000 miles and 200 years from the steppe, tells the tale one night. But the details have shifted. The hero no longer climbs a magnificent, invisible world tree. He climbs a colossal oak, the kind of tree that dominates the new forest landscape. The giant's fortress isn't a castle of clouds anymore. It's a stronghold on a high, misty mountaintop. It's the same essential plot, the climb, the theft, the escape, but it's been given a local address. It's like the story is getting local sponsors. The story walks with you across Europe. It crosses the Rhine. It spreads through the lands that will become Germany and France. It learns new languages, picking up new words and new rhythms. And eventually, after centuries of travel, it crosses the water. It arrives, carried in the minds of Celtic-speaking tribes, in the damp, green, magical islands that will one day be known as Britain and Ireland. The story has survived the journey. It is tired, ancient, and layered with the memories of a dozen different homelands. And here, in these misty isles, it will find a new home and a new set of giants to contend with. Your journey has ended on a new shore. You step out of your coracle, a small hide-covered boat, and your feet sink into the damp green earth of the British Isles. The air here is different from the steppe. It's thick with moisture, tasting of salt and moss. The sky is a soft, shifting gray, rarely showing the vast, hard blue you remember. The land is not flat. It's a rumpled blanket of hills, ancient forests, and boggy plains shrouded in a perpetual, ethereal mist. This is the new home for you, and for your story. You are now a Celt, or at least your descendants are. The migration from the Indo-European heartland has transformed you. Your language has evolved into one of the Celtic tongues. Your gods have taken on local names and characteristics. Your culture has merged with that of the pre-existing peoples of these islands, creating something new and unique. This blending of Indo-European and native traditions is a mainstream historical understanding of how Celtic culture in the British Isles was formed. And your story, the one about the hero, the climb, and the giant, is settling in too. It's finding the new landscape congenial. This is a land that feels built for giants. The rolling, mist-shrouded hills look like sleeping behemoths. The ancient stone dolmens and standing stones scattered across the countryside, built by a long-vanished Neolithic people, look like they're discarded furniture. Your story finds a whole new cast of characters waiting for it in the local mythology. The Irish branch of your new culture has a particularly rich bestiary of giants. They have the Fomorians. These aren't just big, clumsy brutes. They are a race of monstrous, semi-divine beings who represent the wild, untamed, and hostile forces of nature. They are often depicted as having one eye, one arm, and one leg, a grotesque and unsettling asymmetry. They are the gods of chaos, darkness, and the cold, destructive sea. They are, in essence, your old sky giant given a damp, salty, Celtic makeover. In the old Irish myths, the Fomorians are in a constant state of conflict with the gods of civilization and society, the Tuatha De Danann. The Fomorian king, Baelor the Evil Eye, is a perfect giant for your story. He has a single eye that, when opened, can kill anyone it looks upon. He keeps his beautiful daughter, Ethniu, locked away in a high tower on Tory Island to prevent a prophecy that he will be killed by his own grandson. A hero, a handsome young man from the Tuatha De Danann, manages to get into the tower, and, well, you can see the parallels. A powerful, tyrannical figure, a treasure, the daughter, locked away, and a hero who must overcome the odds to get to it. The bones of your story are everywhere. Your old tale of the boy who raids the sky world now gets told with these new local actors. The hero is no longer a generic Proto-Indo-European youth. He's a cunning Irish lad. The giant is no longer a nameless storm god. He's a Fomorian king, smelling the blood of a man from the tribe of the Tuatha De Danann. The world tree is no longer an abstract cosmic pillar. It's a magical, quick-growing plant, maybe a mystical rowan or an otherworldly stalk of wheat, that reaches up to a fortress perched on a storm-lashed Irish cliff. The story thrives in this new environment. It becomes part of the Din Senkas, the lore of places, the uniquely Irish form of storytelling where every hill, lake, and rock has a myth attached to it. The place where the giant fell. That's why that hill over there is shaped so strangely. The magical plant. It grew from a seed dropped by a druid right on this very spot. The story becomes physically rooted in the landscape, as real as the stones and the rain. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. The Celts had a thing for severed heads. In their art and mythology, the head was seen as the seed of the soul, a source of spiritual power that could remain active long after death. Warriors collected the heads of their enemies as trophies. There are tales of severed heads that continue to speak, to sing, or to prophesy. Scholars debate whether this was a literal religious practice or a symbolic motif, but the cult of the head was undeniably a part of Celtic culture. It's not a huge leap to see how a story about a hero bringing back a magical, singing harp, a kind of disembodied voice, would resonate powerfully with a culture so fascinated by the magical properties of the head. The harp becomes a more civilized and frankly less messy version of a talking, prophetic head. As your descendants tell the story around the peat fire, the details continue to shift. The hero might be given a name from a local legend. The magical treasure might change to a cauldron of plenty, another classic Celtic magical object, which could provide endless food for a feast. The core, however, remains stubbornly intact. A hero from our world travels to another world, outwits a powerful being, steals a life-giving treasure, and returns home, having restored balance. The story is now thoroughly Celtic. It has been woven into the fabric of the island's mythology. It has survived its long migration from the steppes, proving its incredible resilience. It has found fertile ground in the Celtic imagination. But new people are coming. From the south, a new, highly organized and relentless power is spreading across Europe. They have their own gods, their own laws, and their own stories. They are building straight roads, massive walls, and stone cities. The Roman eagle is casting a long shadow, and your story, along with your entire culture, will have to find a way to survive in it. The world changes again. It's not a slow, creeping change this time. It's the tramp of marching feet. You are standing on a green hill in the land that will one day be called England, and you watch as a column of soldiers advances along a newly built road. Their armor glints. Their red shields are marked with the emblem of a thunderbolt. They march with a discipline that is both terrifying and mesmerizing. They are the legions of Rome, and they have come to conquer your island. The Roman conquest of Britain, beginning in earnest in 43 CE, is a major historical fact. It was a clash of two worlds. On one side, the Celtic tribes, fierce and fractious, living in hill forts and roundhouses. On the other, the Roman Empire, a centralized, bureaucratic engineering superpower. For the next 4 centuries, a significant part of Britain would be a Roman province. Your story, your Celtic-flavored tale of the hero and the giant, now faces a new kind of threat. It's not about being forgotten. It's about being overwhelmed. The Romans bring their own powerful gods with them. Jupiter, who is uncannily like your old friend the Sky Father. Mars, the god of war. Mercury, the clever messenger. They bring their own myths, the grand epics of Aeneas and the founding of Rome, the stories of Hercules and his labors. These are the state-sanctioned, officially approved stories of the new ruling class. You huddle by the fire in your roundhouse, which now lies in the shadow of a Roman villa with underfloor heating and mosaic tiles. The old stories feel smaller somehow. They are no longer the grand cosmic truths of your people. They are local folklore, the superstitions of the conquered. The Roman authorities are generally quite tolerant of local deities, often merging them with their own in a process called syncretism. They might say your local Celtic god of healing, Sulis, is just a form of their goddess Minerva. It's a way of absorbing and neutralizing your culture. Your gods get demoted, becoming junior partners in the Roman pantheon. And what of your giant? He's in a tough spot. To the Romans, with their sophisticated worldview, a big, clumsy, man-eating Fomorian who lives on a cliff sounds like something out of a provincial nursery. Their monsters are more complex, more political. They have the Hydra, the Minotaur. Your giant seems a bit rustic by comparison. So the story goes underground. It retreats from the public square and the official temples and finds refuge in the private spaces, the family hearth, the remote village, the areas of the island that the Romans never fully subdued, like the rugged highlands of Scotland or the wild west of Ireland. The story becomes a quiet act of cultural resistance. Telling the old tales is a way of remembering who you were before the eagles came. It's a way of saying, we have our own heroes. We have our own magic. We have our own giants. Historians still argue about the extent to which Romano-British culture was truly Romanized. Did the native Celts fully adopt Roman ways, or did they maintain a strong, distinct cultural identity beneath a veneer of Roman administration? The archaeological evidence is ambiguous. You find villas with beautiful mosaics next to traditional roundhouses. You find Celtic gods with Latin inscriptions. It was a messy, hybrid world. In this hybrid world, your story survives. It's a hardy weed, growing in the cracks of the imperial pavement, but it cannot help but be influenced by the new cultural climate. Perhaps the hero's quest takes on a new meaning, stealing from the powerful, distant giant who lives in a great fortress. It starts to sound a little like raiding the local Roman governor's villa. The giant becomes a symbol not just of cosmic tyranny, but of imperial oppression. He's the big, rich, powerful foreigner who is all the good stuff. Here's a quirky tidbit from the Roman world that adds a strange flavor. The Romans were fascinated by gigantism. They had their own myths about the gigantes, who fought the Olympian gods. But they were also interested in real life and usual size. The Emperor Augustus, for example, had a museum of sorts in his palace on Capri, where he collected the skeletons of giants and wild beasts. What they considered a giant might just be a person over 6.5 feet tall, but their fascination was real. Pliny the Elder wrote about the discovery of supposedly giant skeletons. So while they might have scoffed at your Fomorian myths, the idea of giant beings was not entirely alien to the Roman mind. It just moved from the realm of active religion to the category of natural curiosity, a monster for a museum. Your story is biding its time. It's being kept warm by the hearth fire, passed down in whispers from grandmother to grandchild. It survives the long centuries of Roman rule. And then the world changes again. The legions are recalled. The Roman Empire, crumbling from within, abandons the province of Britannia around the year 410. A power vacuum is left behind. The fancy villas with their heated floors fall into ruin. The roads become overgrown. Into this vacuum come new people. From across the North Sea, from the lands of modern-day Germany and Denmark, come waves of new migrants and invaders, the Angles, the Saxons, the Jutes. They are Germanic tribes, another branch of your great, sprawling Proto-Indo-European family. They bring their own language, which will become Old English. They bring their own gods, Odin and Thunor, the god of thunder. and they bring their own stories. Stories of dark forests, dragon hordes, and grim, brooding heroes. Your Celtic story is about to meet a new, very angry Nordic cousin. The Roman villas are cold ruins, their mosaic floors cracked by frost. The country is fractured into a patchwork of petty kingdoms, ruled by Celtic warlords. It is into this chaotic post-Roman world that your story and your people must face a new wave of arrivals. They come from the east, in long ships with dragon prows, their painted shields hung over the sides. They are the Anglo-Saxons. These are not administrators and engineers like the Romans. They are farmers and warriors, looking for new land. And they are your distant cousins, another stream flowing from the same Proto-Indo-European source. Their language, Old English, shares ancient roots with the Celtic tongues, but the two have been separated for so long they are now mutually unintelligible. They bring with them a culture forged in the dark forests and cold seas of northern Europe. It is a grim, fatalistic, and heroic worldview. Your Celtic story, with its clever hero and its connection to the magical living landscape, now encounters the stark, brutal ethos of the Anglo-Saxon saga. The two cultures clash, and for centuries. The Anglo-Saxons pushed the Celtic peoples to the western and northern fringes of the island, to Wales, Cornwall, and Scotland. Your story in the Celtic lands continues on its own path. But a version of it, a seed of the old myth, is absorbed and replanted in the new fertile soil of Anglo-Saxon England. To understand how the story changes, you have to understand the Anglo-Saxon mindset. Their world is a small, bright circle of warmth and community, the Mead Hall, surrounded by a vast, terrifying wilderness. This wilderness is not just woods and swamps. It's a place teeming with monsters. They call it the Borderlands, and it is home to Yatinas, giants, elves, and Orkneys, demons. This is the world of the great Old English epic poem, Beowulf. Beowulf, written down sometime between the 8th and 11th centuries, is the single most important piece of Anglo-Saxon literature. It is a mainstream historical artifact that gives us a direct window into their heroic code. And in Beowulf, we meet a giant who feels strangely familiar. His name is Grendel. Grendel is not a sky god. He is a creature of the swamp, a grim demon who haunts the misty moors. He is a descendant of Cain, the first murderer, cursed by God to wander the wastelands. Every night, he comes to the great mead hall of Heorot, the hall of the Danish king Hrothgar, and he slaughters and devours the king's warriors. He is a monster of pure malice and envy, enraged by the sound of human joy, the music and laughter from the hall. Sound familiar? A powerful monster, angered by music, who preys on humans. It's your giant, but seen through a much darker, more menacing lens. The hero, Beowulf, is also a new breed. He is not a clever, thieving boy. He is a superhero of the ancient world, a warrior of immense strength and courage whose grip is as strong as 30 men. He doesn't trick the giant. He travels to Hrothgar's hall specifically to fight him head-on. In a spectacular, brutal fight, Beowulf tears Grendel's arm from its socket, mortally wounding the beast. The story doesn't end there. Grendel's mother, a monstrous hag who lives in a fiery lake, comes seeking revenge. Beowulf must then descend into this underwater otherworld, a different kind of sky castle, to slay her as well. The descent into the monster's lair, the battle, the return with a trophy. Grendel's head, in this case, not a harp. The structure is there. The bones of your 5,000-year-old story are visible, but they have been reassembled into a new, more savage skeleton. The debate among literary scholars is fierce. Is Beowulf a direct descendant of the same folktale that will become Jack and the Beanstalk, or are they just two separate stories that happen to share a common hero versus monster archetype? It's likely the latter, but the tale of Beowulf and Grendel shows how the idea of a hero confronting a man-eating giant was reshaped by the Anglo-Saxon imagination. The focus shifts from cunning theft to brutal, physical combat. The hero is no longer a trickster. He is a monster slayer. Here's a quirky and slightly gruesome tidbit of Anglo-Saxon belief. They had a very real fear of things that came from the swamp. Leeches, for example, were not just pests. They were called water elf or water elf, a kind of monstrous being. Medical texts from the period contained charms and remedies against elf shot, a sudden pain or illness believed to be caused by the invisible arrows of these malevolent spirits from the wilderness. The idea of a monster like Grendel emerging from the swamp was not a fantasy. It was an expression of a very real and present fear of the poisoned, haunted landscape that lay just beyond the firelight. So your story is now split. In the Celtic West, it continues as a tale of cunning and magic. In the Anglo-Saxon East, its core elements have been repurposed into a dark, heroic epic. The giant is no longer a distant sky being, but a very present, physical threat, a hell serf crawling out of the local marsh. The hero's goal is not to restore prosperity, but to restore order by violently purging the evil from the community. The story has weathered the Roman eagle and the Saxon dragon. It has adapted and survived. But another great change is sweeping across the land, a change that will not come with swords or shields, but with crosses and prayers. A new god is arriving, a single, all-powerful deity whose followers will have very specific ideas about what to do with old stories of pagan giants and magical harps. The Christian missionaries are here, and they are about to put your giant to a whole new use. The world turns once more. The Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, born from conquest, are themselves being conquered, not by a new army, but by a new idea. You are standing in a field as a procession of monks walks by, chanting in Latin. They carry a simple wooden cross before them. This is the arrival of Christianity in Anglo-Saxon England, a slow conversion that took place over several centuries, starting in the late 6th century. This is not just a change in religion. It's a change in the entire operating system of society. The old gods, Woden, Thunor, and the rest of the Germanic pantheon, are now officially demons. The nature spirits, the elves and sprites that lived in the forests and streams, are reclassified as minions of Satan. The entire pagan cosmos is turned upside down. There is now one God, who lives in heaven, and one enemy, the devil, who lives in hell. All the old stories, the myths and legends your ancestors have been telling for thousands of years, must now be filtered through this new, starkly dualistic worldview. What happens to your story? It can't be simply erased. It's too deeply embedded in the culture, too much a part of the language and the imagination. So it gets Christianized. It's given a new moral framework. Its pagan elements either scrubbed away or repurposed to serve a Christian message. This process of adaptation is a mainstream historical reality, seen everything from the renaming of pagan festivals, like the winter solstice festival of Yule becoming Christmas, to the reframing of old myths. Your giant, the big, scary monster, is now an easy fit for the new theology. He is no longer a rival god or a force of nature. He is a demon. He is a personification of sin. His castle in the sky isn't just another world. It's a kind of hell, or at least a place of profound godlessness. His chant, "I smell the blood of an Englishman," takes on a new, sinister meaning. He is a soul eater, a fiend who preys on good Christian folk. The hero's quest changes, too. He is no longer just a clever boy seeking prosperity for his family. He becomes an unwitting agent of divine justice. His climb up the beanstalk is no longer a transgression into the realm of the gods. It's a journey into the heart of evil. When he kills the giant, he is not just saving himself. He is cleansing the world of a demonic presence. He is a pint-sized crusader. The story is transformed from a myth about cosmic balance into a moral allegory about the triumph of good over evil, of faith over sin. Consider the giant's treasures. The goose that lays golden eggs and the bag of gold are now symbols of worldly temptation. They represent greed, the sin of avarice. The giant is a hoarder of this ill-gotten, unchristian wealth. The hero, in stealing them, this is where it gets a little awkward for the medieval storyteller. It's hard to spin grand larceny as a virtuous act. So the story often develops a new preamble. The giant had originally stolen these treasures from the hero's father. This tidbit retroactively justifies the theft. The hero isn't stealing, he's repossessing. He's claiming his rightful Christian inheritance from a demonic usurper. The story gets a convenient legal and moral upgrade. The harp is the easiest to Christianize. The magical, self-playing harp becomes a symbol of divine harmony, of heavenly music. In the hands of the demon giant, this holy object is silenced or misused. When the hero brings it back to earth, he is restoring sacred music to the world of humanity. He is bringing a piece of heaven back from hell. Literary historians still debate how consciously this Christianization process was carried out. Was it a deliberate policy by monks and priests to rewrite pagan tales, or was it a more organic process, where storytellers naturally began to see their old characters through a new Christian lens? The answer is probably both. Scribes in monasteries, who were the first to write many of these tales down, certainly edited them to fit their worldview. The poet who wrote Beowulf, for example, was clearly a Christian, framing the pagan story of Grendel as a battle against a descendant of the biblical Cain. Here's a quirky example of this kind of religious fusion, the Shilonagig. These are strange, explicit stone carvings found on old churches, particularly in Ireland and Britain, dating from the Norman period onwards. They depict a woman holding open her own exaggerated genitalia. No one is entirely sure what they mean. Are they fertility symbols from a pagan past, tacked onto churches to draw on the locals? Are they warnings against the sin of lust? Or are they symbols of the protective power of the female life force, meant to ward off evil spirits? They are a perfect, baffling example of the messy, fascinating way pagan and Christian ideas could coexist and blend in the medieval world. Your story is undergoing a similar, if less graphic, process of blending. Your story is now safer than it has been for centuries. By putting on a Christian coat, it has been given a license to survive in the new medieval world. It's a morality tale that can be told in the shadow of the cathedral as well as by the cottage fire. It has been tamed, its wild, pagan edges smoothed down. But this taming comes at a cost. The story has lost some of its primal, cosmic power. The giant is less of a terrifying god and more of a theological boogeyman. The hero is less of a trickster rebel and more of a good boy doing God's work. The story is about to take the final, crucial step in its long journey, the step from the spoken word to the printed page. For 5,000 years, your story has lived on the most fragile and powerful of storage devices, human memory. It has been a creature of breath and sound, shape-shifting with every telling, adapting to every new language and landscape. It has been fluid, alive, a river of narrative. Now, everything is about to change. The story is about to be frozen, captured, and locked into a single, definitive form. It is about to be written down. You are in a dimly lit room, the air thick with the smell of ink, drying parchment, and beeswax. A man sits hunched over a sloping desk. He is not a bard or a tribal elder. He is a scribe, a man of letters. He holds a sharpened quill pen, and with painstaking care, he is transcribing the story of the boy, the giant, and the magic plant. This moment, which happened countless times with countless stories during the late medieval and early modern periods, is a revolution. The invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg around 1440 is the mainstream historical event that changed the world of information forever. But even before that, the act of writing a story down was a momentous act. It took an oral performance, a thing of time and sound, and turned it into a physical object, a thing of space and sight. It gave the story a body, and this body was singular. Before this moment, there wasn't one Jack and the Beanstalk. There were thousands. Every village, every storyteller had their own version. In one, the hero might be named Tom. In another, the giant might be a sea monster. In a third, the magic object might be a self-grinding millstone. The story was a constellation of related tales, tale type as folklorists call it. But the scribe can only write down one version. The one he knows. The one he prefers. Or perhaps he combines a few versions, creating his own personal director's cut. The version of the story that would become the most famous, the one we know today, began to solidify in England in the 18th and early 19th centuries. The first known printed version was Benjamin Tabart's The History of Jack and the Beanstalk in 1807. He was a London bookseller who specialized in creating chapbooks, small, cheaply made booklets sold by traveling peddlers or chapmen. These were the paperbacks of their day, and they made stories accessible to a newly literate population. Tabart's version wasn't a direct transcription of a raw folktale. It was an edited, polished, and heavily moralized version designed for a middle-class audience of parents who wanted stories for their children that taught a good lesson. This is where the story gets a new, explicit moral framework. Tabart's Jack is initially lazy and foolish, but he learns his lesson and becomes a responsible hero. The giant is explicitly evil, and a new character is introduced, a fairy who explains to Jack that the giant murdered his father and stole all their wealth. This neatly solves the moral problem of Jack's theft and murder. He's not a thief, he's an avenger. He's not a killer, he's an executioner. The story is now a tidy little lesson about justice and redemption. The story has been domesticated. Its wild, anarchic, pagan spirit has been thoroughly broken. It's now safe for the nursery. It's a proper children's story. The choice of the name Jack is significant. By this point in English folklore, Jack had become the archetypal hero of the common man. He was the giant killer, the trickster, the clever lad from the countryside who outsmarts his social superiors. There was Jack the Giant Killer, a different, more violent story cycle. Jack and the Cunning Young Man, Jack Horner. Jack was the everyman hero, the plucky underdog. Giving your hero this name instantly plugged him into a whole network of beloved folktales. Folklorists still debate the impact of print on oral tradition. Did it kill it by making people reliant on a single, fixed text instead of their own memories and creativity? Or did it help preserve stories that might otherwise have been lost? The answer, as always, is a bit of both. Print culture certainly weakened the role of the traditional storyteller, but it also spread tales like Jack and the Beanstalk far and wide, ensuring its survival in a new, standardized form. Here's a quirky tidbit about the transition from oral to written culture, the concept of a typo. In a purely oral tradition, there's no such thing. A storyteller might forget a line or change a detail, but that's just a variation, a live remix. But once a story is written down, there is a correct version. A scribe's slip of the pen, a printer's error in setting the type, these are now mistakes, corruptions of the pure, original text. The idea of a story being right or wrong is a product of the written word. For 4,900 years, your story could never be wrong. Now it can be. The story of the boy and the giant, born on the vast grasslands of the Bronze Age steppe, has survived migration, conquest, and religious conversion. It has worn Celtic mists, Roman togas, and Anglo-Saxon mail. It has been baptized and taught its catechism. Now it has been captured in ink. It has a fixed name, a fixed plot, and a clear moral. It has become a respectable member of society. But its journey is not over. It's about to get a new suit of clothes and a new job, working for the biggest, most powerful empire the world has ever seen. The Victorian era is dawning, and Jack is about to become an enthusiastic agent of industrial capitalism and colonial expansion. Your story has made it. It's a published classic, a staple of the nursery bookshelf. But a story is never allowed to just sit still. It must work for a living. And in the 19th century, in the heart of the booming, bustling, steam-powered British Empire, your story is given a new and very important job. It becomes a piece of propaganda for the Victorian age. You are now in Victorian England. The air is thick with coal smoke from a million chimneys. Factories, the dark satanic mills, churn out iron textiles and wealth on an unprecedented scale. The British Empire spans the globe, its red-flecked map a testament to its industrial and military might. This is a society brimming with confidence, energy, and a powerful sense of its own destiny. And it is a society obsessed with morality, industry, and self-improvement. The Victorians didn't just read stories, they put them to use. Fairy tales were seen as powerful tools for shaping the minds of children, for instilling the proper values of a new industrial and capitalist society. The version of Jack and the Beanstalk that becomes dominant in this period, heavily influenced by Tabart's moralized tale, but further refined by countless Victorian editors, is a perfect fable for the times. Jack himself is transformed. He is no longer the archetypal folk trickster, the chaotic and immoral boy who gets lucky. He is now a model of the self-made man, the boy entrepreneur. His initial trade of the cow for beans is still portrayed as foolish, but it's a foolishness born of youthful naivety, not character flaw. His decision to climb the beanstalk is reframed as an act of bravery and initiative. He is taking a risk, investing his courage in the hope of a return. He is, in a sense, the ultimate venture capitalist. The giant undergoes a similar transformation. He is no longer a demon or a pagan god. He is now the embodiment of the old, decadent, and unproductive aristocracy. He is lazy, brutish, and gluttonous. He sits in his great castle, his country estate, consuming wealth but producing nothing. His treasures, the goose and the harp, are just lying there unutilized. He represents inherited, stagnant wealth. This is a mainstream historical interpretation of the Victorian-era giant. He is the idle rich, a target for the rising, industrious middle class. So when Jack, the plucky boy from the lower orders, climbs up and takes the giant's treasures, he is no longer just an avenging son. He is an agent of economic justice. He is liberating frozen assets. He is taking the means of production from a lazy, inefficient owner and putting them to good, productive use. He will take the golden eggs and invest them, creating prosperity for himself and his mother. He is redistributing wealth from the idle to the industrious. The story becomes a perfect allegory for the Victorian belief in capitalism, hard work, and social mobility. If you are clever and brave enough, you can climb the social ladder, the beanstalk, and take your place among the wealthy. And what of the giant's death? In this new reading, it's not just a happy ending. It's a necessary one. The old, unproductive order must be swept away to make room for the new, dynamic one. The giant's fall is the fall of a dying class. It's harsh, but it's progress. This interpretation also provides a handy justification for the often brutal realities of British colonialism. The giant can be seen as the savage or primitive ruler of a distant land, hoarding resources that could be put to much better, more civilized use by the British. Jack, the plucky English boy, is bringing progress and efficiency to a backward land, even if it means a bit of unpleasantness along the way. Historians still debate the extent to which these imperialist ideas were consciously encoded into children's literature, but the parallels are hard to ignore. Here's a quirky tidbit from the era that shows the Victorian obsession with improving everything, including nature. The Victorians were mad for gardening, and they were particularly fascinated with new, exotic, and gigantic plants being brought back from the far corners of the empire. Giant rhubarb, with its enormous leaves, became a popular ornamental plant. The idea of a magical, fast-growing, gigantic plant like a beanstalk would have felt wonderfully current and exciting to a Victorian audience, tapping directly into their fascination with botanical marvels and the power of scientific cultivation. The beanstalk was no longer just magic. It felt almost like a supercharged version of the real horticultural wonders of their age. Your story has been scrubbed clean of its dark, pagan ambiguity. It's now a bright, optimistic tale of progress and profit. It has a clear hero, a clear villain, and a clear, capitalist-friendly moral. This is the version that was exported across the globe, the one that became the standard Jack. It's the version that many of us first heard, a story so thoroughly renovated that its ancient foundations are almost completely hidden from view. But even this sanitized, improved version couldn't completely erase the story's strange power. The tale was about to be taken out of the nursery and laid on a new kind of couch. A new group of thinkers was emerging, armed not with theology or economics, but with the tools of psychology. They were about to look at Jack, his mother, and the giant, and see something else entirely, a dream. A very, very weird family dream. The 20th century arrives, and with it, a new way of looking at the world and at ourselves. The smoke of the Industrial Revolution begins to clear, revealing a landscape of anxiety, alienation, and a growing interest in the strange, uncharted territory of the human mind. Your story, having served as a cosmic myth, a moral allegory, and a capitalist fable, is about to get a new diagnosis. It's time to put Jack on the couch. You are now in the world of modern psychology. The giants of this age are not sky gods or aristocrats. They are thinkers like Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, who propose that our myths, dreams, and fairy tales are not just idle fictions. They are coded messages from the deepest, most primitive parts of our own minds. They are the language of the unconscious. Suddenly, your simple children's story becomes a rich, complex psychological drama, a map of the inner conflicts that shape every human life. From a Freudian perspective, Jack and the Beanstalk is a classic Oedipal fantasy. The story begins with a boy, Jack, living alone with his mother. The father is conspicuously absent, dead, according to the later versions of the tale. This creates the classic Oedipal triangle. Jack is the little boy who has his mother all to himself. But this blissful state cannot last. The crisis begins when the cow, their source of nourishment, a potent symbol of the mother, runs dry. The mother, representing the demands of the real world, sends Jack out to make his way, to separate from her. His trade of the cow for beans is, in this reading, a deeply symbolic act. He trades the maternal, life-giving animal for a handful of small, hard, seed-like objects. This is seen as an act of burgeoning adolescent masculinity. The beanstalk itself, a magical, fast-growing, sky-piercing plant that erupts overnight, is, well, you can probably guess. It is one of the most frankly phallic symbols in all of folklore. Jack's climb up the beanstalk is a journey of masculine self-discovery, an assertion of his own growing power. He climbs to the land of the giant. The giant, in the Freudian reading, is the ultimate father figure. He is the big, powerful, terrifying male who possesses all the things the boy desires, including symbolically the mother, the giant's wife, who feeds and protects Jack, acting as a surrogate mother figure. The giant's famous line, Fi Fo Fum, is the roar of the jealous, rival father, sensing the presence of the young usurper. Jack's theft of the treasures is the son's attempt to steal the father's potency for himself. He takes the gold power, the goose the ability to create life/wealth, and the harp creative/sexual power. Finally, in the story's dramatic climax, Jack cuts down the beanstalk, causing the giant to fall to his death. He has symbolically killed the father figure, removed his rival, and returned to his mother, now in possession of the father's power. He has successfully navigated the Oedipal crisis and become the man of the house. It's a dark and deeply unsettling reading, but it has a strange, compelling logic to it. This psychoanalytic interpretation is a mainstream approach to fairy tale analysis in literary and cultural studies. Carl Jung and his followers offered a different, though related, interpretation. For Jungians, the story is not about family psychodrama, but about the process of individuation, the journey to becoming a whole, integrated self. The giant is not the father, but the devouring parent archetype, the force that wants to keep the child dependent and prevent them from growing up. He can also represent the shadow, the dark, repressed, and unacknowledged parts of Jack's own personality. The climb is Jack's journey into his own unconscious to confront these forces. The giant's wife is the anima, the feminine aspect of Jack's psyche, who helps him in his quest. By slaying the giant, Jack is not killing his father. He is conquering his own inner demons and fears, integrating his shadow, and achieving psychological wholeness. Scholars still debate which psychological framework, if any, offers the most convincing explanation. Is the story a universal map of the human psyche, or are these modern interpretations just projecting our own obsessions back onto an ancient tale? The truth is, the story is so archetypally powerful that it can comfortably hold all of these readings at once. And here is a quirky psychological tidbit that connects back to the story's very origins. Some psychologists, particularly those in the field of eco-psychology, look at the story and see a tale of humanity's changing relationship with nature. The original giant, the sky god, was a personification of the terrifying power of the natural world. In killing the giant, the hero, and by extension humanity, is asserting dominance over nature. The story, in this view, charts our psychological journey from being a fearful part of the natural world to becoming its self-proclaimed master. Jack's felling of the beanstalk is the final act of severing our connection to the powerful, non-human world of giants, allowing us to become the masters of our own purely human reality. Your story has been psychoanalyzed, diagnosed, and interpreted as a dream. It has been revealed as a drama of family conflict, a journey of self-discovery, and a tale of humanity's conquest of nature. It seems we have finally stripped it down to its bare psychological bones. But there is one final twist in this 5,000-year-old journey. Remember that scientific study, the one that used phylogenetics to trace the story's DNA all the way back to the Bronze Age? Well, that stunning conclusion has not gone unchallenged. The story's very origin, its birth certificate, is now the subject of a fierce academic brawl. You've traveled through time, from the wind-swept steppes of the Bronze Age to the hushed quiet of a psychoanalyst's office. You've seen the story wear a dozen different masks, playing the part of a sacred myth, a moral lesson, a capitalist fable, and a psychological dream. And throughout this journey, we've been leaning on one spectacular, almost unbelievable claim that the story's lineage can be scientifically traced back 5,000 years. This claim, based on the 2016 study by Saragraca da Silva and Jamshid Tehrani, is the revolutionary idea that gives our tale its astonishing depth. But now, you need to step into the quiet, often contentious world of an academic library, where that very idea is under attack. The scientific paper that proposed the Bronze Age origin for the boy who stole the ogre's treasure, our Proto-Jack, made headlines. It was a thrilling, paradigm-shifting piece of research that seemed to bridge the gap between the humanities and the hard sciences. It suggested we could create a fossil record for the ephemeral to date the undateable. For many, it was a moment of vindication, proving that folklore was not just a collection of quaint old tales, but a carrier of cultural DNA that could be decoded. But in the world of academia, no revolutionary claim goes untested. The ink was barely dry on the study before other folklorists, linguists, and anthropologists began to raise serious questions. This is not a sign of failure. It's how science and scholarship work. A bold hypothesis is put forward, and then the rest of the community rigorously tries to poke holes in it. If the hypothesis survives, it becomes stronger. This is the great, ongoing scholarly debate that surrounds the very heart of our story tonight. The primary criticism circles back to that problem we touched on earlier, horizontal transfer. The critics, like the renowned fairy tale scholar Jack Zips, argue that the phylogenetic model, borrowed from biology, is fundamentally flawed when applied to stories. Biological species, for the most part, evolve vertically. A parent passes its genes to its offspring. It's a clean, branching tree. But stories are promiscuous. They are constantly meeting, mingling, and swapping parts. Imagine a medieval merchant traveling from Italy to England. He brings with him an Italian version of the story. An English storyteller hears it, loves the detail about the magical beans, and stitches that detail into his own, completely separate English story about a boy who fights a giant. The new hybrid story now shares a gene with the Italian tale, not because they share a common ancestor from 3000 BCE, but because they had a brief affair in a 14th century pub. The phylogenetic model, the critics argue, cannot properly account for this constant cross-contamination. It mistakes borrowing for kinship. It sees a shared grandmother where there was only a one-night stand. Another major challenge comes from the data itself. To build their family tree, the researchers had to code hundreds of stories with dozens of different features. But this coding is subjective. Is a giant the same plot point as an ogre or a demon? If the hero climbs a rope in one story and a tree in another, is that the same feature, magical climber? or a different one? The critics contend that the way these decisions are made can dramatically affect the outcome of the analysis. A different set of choices could produce a completely different family tree, one that might point to a much younger, perhaps medieval, origin for the tale. A mainstream historical fact that complicates the picture is the literary nature of many of our folk tales. The Grimms, for example, who collected their famous tales in the early 19th century, didn't just transcribe what they heard from German peasants. They often got their stories from middle-class acquaintances, and they heavily edited the tales, combining versions and polishing the language to create a literary product. The story of Jack and the Beanstalk that we know was solidified by literary figures like Benjamin Tabart. The critics ask, how can we be sure we are tracing an ancient oral tale, and not just the spread of a popular printed chapbook from the 18th century? The model might just be tracing the history of publishing, not the history of oral tradition. Here's a quirky tidbit that illustrates the problem. There is a version of the tale from Japan called The Heavenly Ogre's Gourd. In it, a boy climbs a giant loofah vine to the sky, steals a magical, sake-producing gourd from a heavenly ogre, and escapes. On the surface, it looks like a perfect relative of our story. But did it evolve from the same Proto-Indo-European ancestor? Or did the story arrive in Japan much more recently, perhaps carried by European traders in the 16th or 17th century, where it was then adapted with local details like gourds and ogres? The phylogenetic model has a hard time distinguishing between these two possibilities. So, where does that leave us? Do we have to throw away our romantic image of a 5,000-year-old story? The proponents of the phylogenetic method are fighting back. They argue that while horizontal transfer is real, its effects can be statistically modeled and filtered out. They contend that the core structures of these tales are incredibly stable, and that the signal of the ancient vertical descent is strong enough to be detected through the noise of later borrowings. They stand by their findings, arguing that the evidence for a Bronze Age origin is statistically robust, even if it is not 100% definitive. You are standing in the middle of this academic battlefield. On one side are the traditional folklorists, armed with their deep knowledge of literary history and the messy reality of storytelling. On the other are the evolutionary anthropologists, armed with their powerful computers and statistical models. Both sides are passionate. Both sides have valid points. And the truth, for now, remains tantalizingly out of reach. We are left with a story that is either 5,000 years old, or perhaps only 1,000 years old. But maybe, just maybe, the exact age isn't the most important thing. The very existence of this debate proves something profound. It proves that this simple story of a boy, a giant, and a beanstalk is so powerful, so resonant, and so deeply embedded in human culture that it is worthy of this epic intellectual struggle. Its origins are a mystery worth fighting over. And the reason we still care, the reason we still tell this story to our children, lies in the final piece of our puzzle, our enduring fundamental need for giant. So, here you are, at the end of this long, winding path, back in the quiet of your room. The journey is over. You've walked the steppe with horse lords, huddled in Celtic roundhouses, seen the fall of Roman villas and the rise of Saxon mead halls. You've watched a simple story of a boy and a giant become a vessel for the dreams and anxieties of 50 centuries. And now, after all the history, the science, and the psychology, you're left with one last simple question. Why? Why this story? Why has this particular narrative, whether it's 5,000 years old or a mere millennium, survived when countless others have vanished into the silence of the past? The answer, I think, is that we have never stopped needing giants. We no longer see them as sky gods who live in cloud castles. We don't see them as Fomorian sea monsters or as the literal descendants of Cain. But we still have giants. Our giants just wear different clothes. They are the vast, impersonal forces that loom over our lives, making us feel small, powerless, and insignificant. Your giant might be a faceless corporation, a monolithic bureaucracy that seems to operate by its own incomprehensible rules. It might be a towering medical bill, a mountain of student debt, or the relentless pressure of social media, with its impossible standards of success and happiness. It could be a global economic system that feels rigged and indifferent, or the slow, creeping dread of climate change, a problem so immense it feels like a monster in the sky that we are powerless to fight. These are the giants of the 21st century. They are complex, abstract, and they don't shout Fi Fo Fum, but they still smell our fear and our anxiety. And in the face of these giants, we feel very much like Jack. We feel small. We feel like our resources are dwindling, like we've been forced to sell the family cow for a handful of seemingly worthless beans. We feel that the world is out of balance, that the treasures of security, of prosperity, of a hopeful future are locked away in a castle we cannot reach. This is why we still need the story. It is a shot of pure, undiluted hope delivered directly into the veins of the culture. It tells us that the beans just might be magic. It whispers that there might be a pathway to the giant's castle, a hidden route that no one has noticed before. It reminds us that giants, for all their immense power, are often slow-witted. They are arrogant. They have blind spots. They can be outsmarted. The story insists that cunning can be more powerful than brute force, that courage is not the absence of fear, but the act of climbing anyway, your hands raw and your heart pounding. This is the mainstream psychological function of fairy tales. They provide a safe, symbolic arena in which to confront and overcome our deepest fears. The story of Jack is a training manual for the human spirit. It teaches the powerless that they have power. It teaches the desperate that there is always a chance for a miracle. And it provides a script for one of the most essential human narratives, the story of the underdog. We are wired to root for David against Goliath, for the clever rabbit against the lumbering bear, for the small boy against the giant. It's a story that affirms our own potential for greatness, no matter how small we may feel. Now for one last quirky tidbit, a modern echo of the ancient myth. In the world of rock climbing, there's a famous, incredibly difficult route up the granite face of El Capitan in Yosemite. It's called the Magic Mushroom. Climbers who ascend this route are, in a very real sense, climbing a modern beanstalk, a path to a sky world, of breathtaking views and immense personal achievement. They are modern Jacks, scaling the face of a giant, not to steal a harp, but to find a treasure of self-discovery and prove that the impossible can be made possible. Ultimately, the great academic debate over the story's precise age and origin is fascinating, but it doesn't change the story's function. Whether the tale was first told around a Bronze Age fire or a medieval hearth, its purpose remains the same. It is a story about hope in the face of overwhelming power. It's about the revolutionary idea that the world does not have to stay the way it is. The boy at the bottom can end up on top. The balance of power can be shifted by a single, desperate, brave act. The story has survived for so long because the human condition has not fundamentally changed. We are still born small and vulnerable into a world full of giants. We still have to find the courage to trade our last cow for a chance at magic. We still have to climb, to risk, to steal back our own prosperity and our own music from those who hoard it. And we still have to be brave enough to pick up the axe and chop down the things that threaten us. The story of Jack is your story. It is my story. It is the timeless, essential 5,000-year-old truth about the audacity of hope, and so the journey comes to a close. The echoes of the giant's fall have faded, leaving only the quiet hum of the world around you. The ancient steppe, the misty isles, the clamor of the Victorian city, all these places dissolve back into the soft darkness of your room. The story, which has traveled so far and worn so many faces, now settles back into its familiar shape, the simple nursery tale you've always known, but it rests now on a foundation of immense, astonishing depth. Think of that single, continuous thread of narrative passed from one human mind to another, a fragile chain of breath and memory stretching back through unimaginable gulfs of time, a quiet testament to the enduring power of a good story to make sense of a chaotic world. The voices of those ancient storytellers are silent now, their campfires long extinguished, but the tale they told to their children, a tale of courage in the face of immensity, still flickers in the deepest part of our shared imagination. The giant is gone, the hero is home, and the world, for a moment, is back in balance. Let the lingering images soften and fade, like mist clearing from a green hill, leaving only a sense of peace and the gentle, steady rhythm of your own breathing. The story is over. The need for struggle is past. There are no more giants to fight tonight. There is only the calm, the quiet, and the gentle pull of sleep. Let your mind drift now, on the slow, easy current of the night, towards whatever dreams may come.